Friends, today I'll be discussing about Indian economy and I'll be trying to get as many points I can in short period of time. So without further ado, let us start. So when the Britishers left in the 1950s, they they left with all the wealth and all the resources that they could, and we were left astray with the thought of on how we should run our nation in terms of economic model. In the 1950s, when we our constitution was fully adopted, in the 1951 we got our first official uh, government, which was led by Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru, and he had two options. One was the capitalistic approach of the US, like the US, that basically said that the wheels of the economy was to be rested within the powers of the private players. The other was the socialism model, and this Fabian socialism model was accepted, and we were introduced with the concept of mixed economy, that basically, in short, said that the road will be paved for the private players by the government, and the real power will rest with the government of India. If we break down this economy in any nation, generally we come up with three sectors, that is the agriculture, industry, and services. But back in the 1950s, there was no concept of services sector. Agriculture was seen as something that involved more population in terms of employment, but the value addition was far inferior. Industries, on the other hand, involved low population in terms of employment, but the value addition was significant. So what happened, if we are talking about the agriculture sector, it can be further classified into two, that is the food grain production and the horticulture. And I was glad to find out that this year these both these categories broke the record, and we had more than 330 million metric ton production in horticulture and more than 300 million metric ton production in food grain. Uh, what happened at this time, the US sent its scientists to Mexico to research about into the agricultural sector, and what they came up was the idea of green revolution. This idea of green revolution was acted upon in the 1970s and the 1980s in India, and there were various reforms, uh, various innovation in terms of irrigation in India. Electricity was made cheaper, fertilizers were introduced widely, and so our agricultural sector flourished. Now what happened, the the drivers of the Indian economic model rest within the PSUs, public sector undertakings. There are more than 300 plus central PSUs and more than 1500 state PSUs combined of all the states and union territories. If before the 1970s we had this concept of license quota permit Raj, that was introduced in during the time of Indira Gandhi, and but it basically hampered our thinking in terms of, we were not thinking in terms of exporting. We were, whatever we were producing, we were consuming it ourselves, and so some reforms were thought of being introduced, and some of which are the Foreign Exchange Regulation Act, Industries Development and Regulation Act, Monopoly of Restricted Trade Practices Act, which was further transformed into the Competition Commission of India. And so this was how it evolved. Now if we are talking about the sectors of the economy, then it is important that I tell you what is the contribution of each sector. So, agriculture contributes approximately 15 to 18% of the GDP. Industries that combines construction, mining, and manufacturing sector comprises of approximately 30% of the GDP, and services sector comprises of it contributes approximately 55% of the GDP, which is very significant amount. So, what happened during the Rajiv Gandhi period? The first wave of reforms were introduced, and we came up with this computer age. He pushed ISRO and various other things, but he got caught up in very like the Bofors scam, and there was balance of payment crisis. There was the manufacturing sector collapsed, foreign exchanges were reducing, and it basically hampered our production. So what in the 1989-90 we came up with this trio of PV Narasimha Rao, who was leading, Manmohan Singh, who was the finance minister, and P Chidambaram, who was the commerce minister back then, and they brought up these economic reforms of LPG, that was called LPG reform, that is the liberalization, privatization, and globalization, in 1991. And so it transformed of our way of thinking in terms of exporting. We were now thinking of exporting products and services, actually not services, but we were thinking of exporting our products and merchandise to the world. In the 2000 and till 2010, three sectors emerged within the services sector, that is the IT, the auto sector, and the pharma sector. And during that time, our real GDP growth, I'm talking about the real GDP, not the nominal GDP, it was approximately 8 to 10%. And since 2010, no new sector has been formed. If we talk about exports, in 2014, our merchandise exports, when I'm talking about merchandise exports, products and goods and products, they stood at $314 billion. And last year, the 2019 and 2020 report that came up, the merchandise exports were still standing at $314 billion. So that is quite shocking figures and data and statistics that NSO came up with, and it is disturbing because in this era of globalization, from the past 6 years, our exports have been constant. That means we do not have regulated it, we do not have appreciated it. No new policy or laws have been done to ease out the stress within this sector. So after the 1991 reforms, all of this happened. So we've come till 2010. What happened in 2002? China was brought in the light of WTO by the US. Actually, US thought of bringing China with the idea that China will end communism, but it happened otherwise, that China showed world the way of how you can lead when you have communism as its working model. And it was adopted by many nations as well. So US failed to do that. So what happened? China, before 2002, China was already a significant hub of industry and manufacturing. When it got introduced to WHO, it was like its hand expanded, and the whole world was within the reach of China. And we can see that every resources and everything that China has, no other nation, it is a bitter truth, but this is what it is, no other nation can compete as of now with within that effective range and within that technology, or quality rather, not technology. So also in 2002, Alan Greenspan of US tried to expand monetary policy, and what followed up was the 2007 global financial crisis. Actually, what happened is people were given loans, uh, they were allowed to take loans, but only if they invested in the collateral of USA. So what happened was, when the real estate sector collapsed, the economy jammed. Uh, so this was the 2007 global financial crisis. To overcome this, the Federal Reserve pushed so much of liquidity into the system. It deficit monetized itself and pushed so much of liquidity, and India followed it. So since the 2010, our optimism it the optimism increased. People started spending because there was liquidity in the system. What happened since 2016 and 17, since the demonetization and GST was introduced, and it is accepted by the government itself, that there has been a significant reduction in the optimism and people. And this is, I'm not saying this usually, this is what the data says, that people are saving more and spending less. And that can also be seen with in the pattern. If we see what banks are doing, the retail loans are high, personal loans are high, and rest everything is reducing significantly. So since 2017 this is happening. What if we are talking about the GDP? I'm coming over the summary of this topic. Our GDP of 2019-2020 stands at approximately 2.7 trillion dollars, and it has been seen that from the past 8 quarters it has been significantly reducing. So it is clear that it is a pattern and it is a trend. And now we are struck with this COVID crisis, and there are actually 8, if we are not talking 8, then there are basically generally 6 engines of GDP, and out of those 6, 2 are our primary importance. That is the PFC, the private final consumption expenditure, and the GFCF, the gross fixed capital formation. Both these comprises approximately 90% of the GDP, 87% to be precise, somewhere around that. The PFC is the consumption pattern. What is happening is people are consuming less, and this is what the statistics, MOSPI and the NSO has revealed in the last month. Also, the consumer expenditure survey and the periodic labor force participation has been this data has been scrapped by the government itself, and so there is some issue over that as well. But if we keep it aside, what should be uh, our stand on this? So various analysis have came, and what I think is the government should forget about the FRBM policy and should not think about what should be our deficit. I know that the government has uh, done everything to restrict this deficit, but in these times when people need money, the government is not incentivizing it. It is basically saying take loans and pay it back. Not everybody can do it. The people who are on the bottom of this hierarchy certainly cannot do it, and I think uh, it will it will impact very badly if this is not taken serious issues. But this is what I think, and if FRBM policy is one thing, the other thing is these rating agencies, that is the Fitch, Moody's, and S&P. We should not think about them for at least 3 years. In the last 2 or 3 days, we have been degraded by them, and we are just above the investment grade nation. But what will happen is, if we keep thinking about these rating agencies, which the government is currently doing, it will, in the long term, it will have no impact, because if your people are not spending, then then the wheels of the economy will be jammed, and we are a developing nation, so this should never happen. It is a very bad sign. So I would conclude it with that foods insecurity is rising will be seen due to income loss, and so I believe whatever I have come up with, the government has knows more than every one of us, and so I'm hopeful, and so I will conclude it. And I will also say that during this corona crisis, let us be safe, and let us uh, be aware of what is going on around us. So thank you very much, and I would also like in to tell that whatever you feel about the videos, you can share it on comments. If good, if you feel good about what I put on, that is good. If you also feel that something is wrong, I would appreciate if someone tells me what is wrong, because I would like to continuously improve on what I uh, am doing currently. So thank you very much. See you.